So I thought this might be kind of cool. This is my 98 Civic manual. This is my 97 Civic automatic. As you can see, pretty much the exactly same motor here. I just did a whole lot of work, did the timing belt, oil pan gasket, etc. But turns out I'm still leaking some oil there. So I'm going to show you all today what it's like to tear the timing belt off and slap a new cam seal in. If you look right in there, you should be able to see that kind of a little chunk. I think that is our problem here. And if you can imagine, this belt spins very quickly. If you have an oil leak, oil quickly ends up all over everything else. So that is not a good place to have an oil leak. First things first is we gotta jack the car up. Generally, I would do both sides, but this should be relatively quick today, so I'm just gonna do the one. So throughout this whole process, I kind of like to keep it stupid simple. You know, you gotta get a lot of things out of the way before you get to anything important. So we're gonna start with that. The first thing is the wheel. So this is usually when I'm gonna take plug wires out, and then if you're comfortable, if your valve cover bolts have been out and you know they're gonna come out, you can kind of zap them out. If not, I recommend using a 1/4-inch ratchet because they can strip and snap pretty easy. Mine, however, were just out the other day, so I'm just gonna zap them out. And then make sure you have somewhere to put your bolts so you don't lose them all. And the only other thing holding this valve cover on, there's a hose clamp right here, just a vacuum line, and then you got your throttle cable, but just move those out the way, it'll come up. Just took the skid plate off, and these are the bolts and clips for that. And if you just take this one side off, you can really get it as out of the way as you need to. Everything we're working with is right here behind that pulley, really. So in my opinion, from here, we really, there's only a number of ways you can do it. I do power steering pump, AC belt, and then alternator. So we're just getting belts off. We're gonna get the pump out of the way. We're gonna move the cruise control. You can see a couple bolts there. Power steering pump, you got one here and one there. And then I'll probably show you the AC, but that right there is the tensioner for the AC belt. So it's been a few minutes. You can see cruise control hanging out up there, power steering pump. And then you can just kind of see how much room that really opens up there, because the main area we're gonna be in is here with the timing belt, the cover, the accessories, all that kind of stuff. At this point, I am gonna take the AC belt off. There's a bolt there for the tensioner, nut on the outside for the pulley, and then there's a bolt there and at the bottom for the bracket. And while I'm here, I'm gonna take the dipstick tube out. During this whole process, extensions are gonna be one of your best friends here. Honda makes it real simple and they only use a few different sizes, but there's certain tools that certainly make it easier. Like these, for example, gear wrench. They go a long way for skinny bolts where you just simply can't fit a ratchet. So you'll see, just took that belt off there, and the pulley's gonna be right behind it. Good enough. So a washer just hit the ground, but you'll see in the pulley, there's this. You wanna make sure when you put it back on, this is going on the inside facing the engine. And this is the bracket that pulley rides on. So you'll see this moves. This is how the tensioner works. The pulley goes on here, and you got your 2 bolt holes there, and it sits kind of like that in the car. So the alternator belt's gonna be a little harder to see, but if you see that bolt in the middle of my light there, that's the one for the top. It's a 12mm, and I strongly recommend a gear wrench. And then if we come down here, well, hold on now, where am I looking? Yep, that bolt right there in the corner, that is a 14. And with these, you just need to loosen both of them. You don't need to actually take them off. So once you get those 2 bolts loose, the alternator itself is the tensioner, so you really just push it forward towards the front of the car, and then the belt will slide right off. So the dipstick does have a clip right there, and you literally just take it right off, and it sits kind of back in the timing cover, but you may not be able to get the clip out until you get the dipstick tube out. And for the tube, it really doesn't get much simpler. Needle nose, you don't want to go too crazy now and start getting it all bent up and all that kind of stuff. But you just want to kind of get a grip on it, and then it'll wiggle out of there. And I mean, it's a dipstick, you know, you can scratch it up a little bit. It's not the end of the world. You just don't want it to be all bent. So next is what makes these jobs notorious, and it is the crank pulley. That bolt, the torque spec is 134 foot-pounds. Over the years, they get severely tight. So if this is your first time taking it off, they make these, which pretty much sits in there. It has a 1/2-inch drive here for a breaker bar, and it'll lock that so you don't spin it the wrong way when you're going to break it loose. However, I just had mine out 2 days ago, so I am gonna hit it with the impact and hope for the best. That being said, if you do have a decent 1/2-inch drive impact, a lot of times that's all you need. But this is even a Walmart brand impact here, and it usually does me pretty well. So that was not bad at all. The other day, I actually broke a 1/2-inch extension and another 1/2-inch extension trying to get it out with a breaker bar. So I actually just took this out and realized that I did not set us at top dead center, which is where we want to be to make it putting it back together easier. So all I'm gonna do here is zap it back on. Hold your pulley so you're not going crazy, and then we're gonna turn it by hand here. So before I even begin to show you this part, disclaimer, I'm not a certified mechanic. I've seen mixed opinions on the internet about this. Every time I've set it to top dead center, I've turned it clockwise. I will say, if you take spark plugs out, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to turn the motor by hand. You should feel some resistance, but it should not be difficult. I mean, I'm sure you can see here, I'm just spinning a little bit, and then I'm gonna try to get it set here so that you can see our timing marks. You should be able to see there's a mark that says up, and then back here, there's a tiny little tick mark you may not be able to see on there, but that has to line up with the head, and I went just a little bit too far, so I'm just gonna rotate it again. All right, so I set that top dead center, and when I do that, I like to use the tick marks that line up with the head and actually put a feeler gauge, and it should fit right in that mark when it's flush with the head. And then I'll try, once I get some of this apart, and show you the other timing marks. There is one on the pulley, but personally, I don't use that one as much as I use the other ones. So I'm just gonna zap this back out, and then I'll pick back up somewhere. So this part is pretty important. You'll see that key there on the top, and you'll just pull the pulley out, and you do not want to lose the key, which I didn't. It's right there. I was trying to pick it up, but I couldn't. So yeah, this all looks relatively okay so far. There's nothing crazy down here. I think our only leak is going to be from the top there. So next we're going to take the timing cover, which is those two bolts. There's one tucked back in there, one right above my finger there, and then there's two more on top. So this part might be a little bit more difficult to see here. I already took the top two out. I think I forgot to mention that crank pulley bolt is a size 17. All of these smaller bolts are a size 10. So they, like I said earlier, they keep it real simple size-wise. It's just sometimes you need different variety of the same size tool, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna get this cover off, and then I'll show you what's going on. So I'm not really looking as to what you can see too much, but this is your crankshaft sprocket here, and this is your, crankshaft position sensor. So that is gonna have to come off because the belt has to come off, and that's kind of just how it operates. So I'm gonna take that off, and then I'm gonna go up top, and I will go from there. So before I go up top, you can kind of see what everything looks like, and you'll notice there's oil everywhere. And in theory, that is because the cam is way up there and it's just leaking all down into the cover. And this is exactly where the bottom of the timing cover sits. So in theory, that should just be loose oil, not coming from the oil pan gasket, but coming from up top there. All right, so you can see here, that right there is our tensioner, and that's gonna be a 14, right? We want to make sure all of this, the crankshaft and the camshaft specifically, don't move when the belt's not on them, because then you'll be spending a whole lot of time putting your car back in timing, and it's just not fun. I've been there, don't recommend it. Now if you're taking the timing belt all the way off, this motor mount has to come off, or there's no way to get it off. You can cut it, but to put a new one on, you still have to take this mount off. Not really optional. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop the belt off, take the crankshaft sprocket off so I can show you that timing mark, and then we'll go from there. All right, so this is the timing mark I was talking about here. That arrow should be pretty well lined up with that mark on the sprocket. It is almost impossible to see if you have the belt on still. So if you ever get out of time, just know that should look something like that. All right, so I got the belt off, and this is kind of the best angle I can get you here. So this is what we're taking off. This is the camshaft gear, and the cam seal is directly behind it. So I believe the torque spec on there is either 27, I think it's 27 foot-pounds, it might be 33. So it takes a little bit of effort. And what I like to do here to avoid moving it, take you a big flat head, take it in there. Since we're gonna be prying this direction, the gear's gonna wanna move this way. So what you can do is, you see how it's lined up on the head there. We don't wanna put crazy pressure on it by any means, but we wanna get our ratchet, we'll make sure that we're touching the gear, so when we pry, we're not gonna move, and then break it loose. Once it's loose, it should be finger tight after that. You're not gonna go anywhere once it's loose. It's really just avoiding moving that camshaft when you don't want to here. So let me get this out. Well, at least it hit the floor. And then you'll see here, kind of similar to the crank, so we have that keyway on there. So this is fixed. It's not going anywhere, but it's only gonna fit one way. And you'll see, I mean barely, but you can kind of see the keyway on there. It's only going on one way. That's why it's so important that our camshaft doesn't move. So at this point, we have one more timing cover bolt that's actually kind of tight to get off of here. And then it's a matter of getting that torn cam seal out. But you can see already right there, that's a new cam seal. I mean, there's a chunk that equals a leak 10 times out of 10. So that is what we're hoping, that it's all it is. I happen to have one just laying around the garage, so we're gonna hope that even though it's aftermarket, it's not too bad. And hopefully, since this one is new, it'll come out significantly easier than the one the other day did. So that is out. This is your last little piece of timing cover here. And then you'll see we're just looking at straight block and head there. So I'm gonna go ahead and monkey this out. Usually I'll take a pick and go kind of on the inside there. And you just have to be real careful not to scratch up your surface or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip to when I got it out. So I thought I would kind of try to show you this a little bit. It's gonna be hard to see, but I have a gap here that I kind of just messed up with my pick intentionally. So what I'm gonna do is very carefully put my screwdriver in, and then it's gonna catch the side here, and I'll just pry it out just like that. So sometimes you get lucky. Obviously, it's helpful that that one was just out the other day, or just went in the other day, I should say. So now we want to look at that, clean it up real good, make sure there's no crazy nicks or anything, and then I'll show you putting the new one in. So also, you might be able to see over here, I have a drain pan just full of coolant, oil, whatever it is. Don't do that. I just kicked it and got coolant all in one of my shoes, so that's fun. But one thing you definitely want to do, you can see obviously I tore up the old one getting it out, but you want to make sure they're the same this way and that they're the same this way, which obviously again torn up, but it looks the same, it feels the same. So when we go to put this in, we want to put some light oil on the inner lip and on the outer lip to help it go in easier. And then I'm going to use either a 32, 36 millimeter socket, something like that, after I find that in my engine bay. And then you want to press it in as even as possible, avoid any wrinkles, anything like that. And when you drop things, it's very helpful to have retrieval tools like this guy, because I certainly cannot fit my hands down there, but this guy can. Alright, so like I was saying, I am just going to steal a little oil from up here. Oil on the inside here. It usually sits in corners too, so you find a corner, you should be able to find some oil. Take that there. Just get, you don't need to go too crazy here, but I think this is what happened last time. So I think I oiled the outer lip, but not the inner lip. So then what I want to do here is get it pretty much just started as flat as possible, right? So not too crazy pushing in yet. Then this is a 32 and it fits pretty much perfect around the side of it there. So I'm gonna use that, and really you can kind of just push it in by hand, but if you want to make sure it's in, you can take like the back end of a screwdriver against the engine mount here, or maybe the front side. And actually, a pry bar is going to be better. So if you get a little pry bar, all my tools, by the way, are Harbor Freight. I'm a big believer that if you're not a master mechanic, you don't need to spend thousands on tools. Now I am a garage home mechanic, so that's what we're working with here. So that feels pretty in there. So what I'm gonna do is just go around the whole thing here and feel it. Make sure I don't see any nicks, make sure it feels flush, everything like that. And it looks pretty good to me. So that's pressed in there, it's oiled up a little bit. So all I need to do now really is redo everything I took off. So I don't know if I'm really gonna show the whole putting it back together process. If you got into this point, the rest of it goes in how it came out, really. The timing belt is arguably one of the hardest parts to get on. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing it. The main thing is you have to be on. You have to be spot on by the tooth, or you're either not gonna start, you're gonna bend the valve. It's not gonna be good news. So if you're replacing water pump, oil pump, anything like that while you're here, look up the torque specs, use a torque wrench, even if it's just Harbor Freight. I mean, I'll show you right now. All I've got, I have a 1/4 inch and I have a 1/2 inch. 1/4 inch is in inch pounds. The torque spec for the water pump and the oil pump are 108, 110 inch pounds, not bad. 27 foot-pounds on the cam gear bolt. And then if you've never done this, I don't recommend just having bolts like this. I've done this probably 10 times now between this car and the other car, mostly the other car. So yeah, I kind of know where everything goes. If you don't, highly recommend getting you some little Tupperwares, something like this. Dollar Tree has them. It'll save a lot of time, a lot of frustration. Same thing with moving stuff out of the way, like this here. The cruise control, power steering, all that kind of stuff. The more you can get out of the way, the easier your life's gonna be. So I definitely recommend that. I don't know if this will ever see the internet. It's kind of a new thing for me, but I now have 2 EJ Honda Civics, and I like working on both of them, so we're gonna see what happens. So I decided I will at least touch on a few things, especially the camshaft and cam gear type of things. I think yesterday, or the other day, I actually used, I believe it was a 3/8 extension to tighten it back up here, because you got a little bit less room, but this, it fits real tight in there. Then I have a 1/2 inch torque wrench down to a 3/8 with a 12 mil on it, and it's going to be just about exactly the same process, but clearly opposite. So all we're going to do here is press down on our extension so we're not moving, wait for that click, and that is it. And when we check our marks, we should still be in time, and we are. So that's really all it is. I might touch on a few more things, but I might just try to put this back together and fire her up. Alright, this is arguably the sketchiest way that I do any part of this, but this shows you that I'm a backyard mechanic. Alright, you got screwdriver and socket driver shoved in that side, screwdriver and socket driver shoved in this side, so that cam gear really should not be able to go anywhere. And then what I do is I put the timing belt on the cam gear first, and I zip tie either side of it, but give it just a little bit of play in there so that you can get around the tensioner, around the water pump, around the crank, and then dink, kind of shove it all in at once. So I'm gonna flip and I'll show you at least where I zip tied it, but I won't be able to really record how I get the belts on, so yeah. Also, I figured while I zip tie this, I would touch on the fact that I'm pretty confident they make camshaft locks for these cars. So if you want to be a little less risky than I am, and if you don't have, 4 socket / screwdrivers laying around, you got a few bucks to spend, I'm pretty damn confident they make camshaft locks here. But this is how I've done it all of the 8 to 10 times I've taken a belt on and off, and it's been working out really well lately. So knock on wood, I'm gonna go ahead and pop that on and then probably jump on, say something else, and throw it all back together. So the timing belt is now on and tensioned. I think what I'm gonna do is just kind of give you a rundown. You can see kind of all my parts left over there. So right now we're about to do bottom timing cover, then the crank pulley, then alternator belt, AC belt, power steering belt, valve cover, spark plugs, spark plug wires, and the dipstick goes in there somewhere too. So pretty much the order I took it out, reverse order, put it back in. None of it, some of it does need to be torqued to a certain spec, but most is just until it's tight. You don't need to go crazy, just snug, that's it. So as you can tell, the car is clearly back together. I'm about to fire it up, and there's a limited number of outcomes here. Either it doesn't start and I really messed up, it does start and it leaks oil and I still really messed up, or we're good. So I'm gonna make sure that's on there real quick. I just topped off oil, made sure we got coolant since I did the water pump last time I was in here, and mess with everything. So let me go ahead and start her up. That's a good start. We're running. I don't don't know what y'all are seeing. That all looks good right now. And that was our issue beforehand, so I'm gonna let it warm up for just a few minutes, and then I'm gonna restart the video here and rev it a little bit. Alright, so we're not warm all the way up to operating temp, but we are idled down to about 1200 RPM. So I'm gonna hop in and give it a little bit of RPM, and if it's leaking, y'all are gonna know before I will. Well, it looks good as far as I can tell.